Oh boy, I have lots of thoughts about this very topic. And so I'm interested to see the angle that is taken in this video. This is by Football Iconic. He's excellent football creator. If you've not subscribed to him, go ahead and subscribe. He makes fantastic content. And make sure you like the video because I don't know if you know this, but simply liking the video is equivalent to donating to somebody's Patreon because it helps the algorithm pick this video up and show it to more people, which in turn helps us make a living as content creators. So if you can't support a Patreon account for your favorite creators, at least hit the like button for us because that definitely helps. So let's watch Why Football Failed in America by Football Iconic. And hopefully along the way, I'll be able to offer some of my opinions here. And hopefully this video is not an hour long because I could make it an hour long easily.
I believe in soccer in America. I come to play here because I know in few years we'll have a good team in America.
Football in North America has been steadily improving over the past few years, but for such a wealthy and sports-orientated country, have you ever wondered why many in the world's sporting and commercial capital of the world haven't really cared that much about the most popular sport in the world? There have been several attempts to drum up interest in several ways, and what better way is there to get people's attention than to rely on...
Just so everyone's clear, it is definitely a different environment now than it has been in the recent, decades. It's different. There's actually a tangible interest. Like today, I'm in the deep south of the United States, and today at my class, there were people wearing MLS kits. So people actually taking it seriously, as opposed to the way it used to be. But I'm still open to hearing how it's failed because it definitely feels like there's a tangible shift in the culture.
The star power of star players. Zlatan Ibrahimovic moved over to LA Galaxy in 2018, made a lot of noise, scored a belter on his debut, and dipped. 11 years before that, in 2007, David Beckham came in. Great player, great career, star power, brand awareness, we know the deal. He even ended up becoming an owner of a club, and it was that same club where the great man himself, Lionel Messi, entered the game. He took his talents down to South Beach in 2023, and he's even gone on to start up a budding career in Hollywood.
Bad boys?
It seems these efforts...
Dude, they played when I went to see the United States versus Bolivia I have a vlog of that, by the way. If you're just new to the channel, I'll probably will suggest that video somewhere in here. But I did a vlog where I went to my first football game ever, and they played this ad with Messi during the halftime. And before the game, I saw this ad on the Jumbotron at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, which is one of the biggest Jumbotron TV screens you've ever seen. They played this ad over and over and over again. So I got very familiar with it. It's a funny ad. But yeah, Messi's everywhere. He's everywhere. I mean, we're walking through Texas. There's almost as many Messi kits as there are Dallas Cowboys. It's not quite, but it's close. He's made an impact. People keep saying, oh, it'll never work. He's made a massive impact over here.
Are a bit of a work in progress. Leaning on star power is nothing new. These methods are, well, antiquated. While Messi made a big splash when that deal was announced, perhaps no other player has had quite the same impact on football in both North, South, all of America as the greatest player in World Cup history, Pelé. Although, in his case, the location was New York and the year was 1975. The impact Pelé had on the sport in America was tremendous, for all the right reasons and all the wrong ones. Albeit indirectly, he contributed heavily towards its downfall. Now, he didn't exactly do anything wrong. Because of him, football was on the cusp of truly hitting the mainstream. Sadly, his presence led to a domino effect of bad decisions that are still very much affecting the game today. So, today we're going to talk about Pelé. We're going to talk about the meteoric rise and the historic fall of football in the United States of America. Hello, hope you're well. I'm well too. Thanks for asking. What better place is there to start than the very beginning?
NASL.
Our story starts all the way back in 1967. Just to avoid confusion, I'm going to have to refer to the sport as soccer for quite a bit of this one. All the purists out there, you're going to have to forgive me. I don't want to do this. I have to. I don't want to confuse football with hand egg. Soccer in America was nothing to be impressed by this point in history. Leagues had been around stretching back to the late 1800s, but this was nothing to write home about. However, after millions of Americans had tuned in to watch the 1966 World Cup, proving that there was tangible interest in the sport, an opportunity had presented itself to a group of investors. Following a few failed attempts at establishing a nationwide league, a few failed franchises, and a lot of money lost along the way, on the 7th of December 1967, the two most prominent soccer leagues in the country joined forces: the National Professional Soccer League, or NPSL, and the United States Soccer Association, or USA. No, that wasn't a joke. Merged to make way for the NASL, the North American Soccer League. Things didn't start out great. There was a lot wrong with the league early on. In an attempt to kickstart the professional scene they were going for, several foreign players were brought in pretty much immediately. By the end of the first season, there were only 13 American-born players across the 17 teams. Foreign players were pretty much running the show. Oh, sorry about that. That's the wrong logo. Anyway, in this scenario, local fans found it difficult to identify with players of foreign backgrounds, which didn't help with drumming up interest. Low ticket sales, coupled with low TV viewership and the inability to appropriately show adverts mid-game, much like in other American sports, meant that several teams went out of business within less than a...
That's a big reason. I think that it wasn't shown to be financially viable. So a lot of teams went insolvent, and advertisers didn't want to advertise in a sport where they weren't allowed to advertise throughout the game. And I think that's unfortunate, because it's just when you're introducing a sport, we see. Okay, I'm trying to get a thought out. Go with me on this for a second. I'm sorry for pausing the video, but go with me for a second on this. When it comes to, let me give an argument here. When it comes to American football, or hand egg as it was so kindly referred to in this video, we have a grassroots sort of style of this game. It starts from a kid. You can play pee-wee football or little league, and you can start very, very young playing this sport. And there's sort of a grassroots love for the game. Most people in the United States, I mean, they have a pro team that they support and cheer for, but most people spend more time on Friday nights or throughout the week taking their kids to practice and play this. Most people gather around to watch the local high school team every Friday night. And for some communities, the biggest thing happening in their entire week is not their NFL team playing. It's not that. It's the high school team. Oh, we're playing a team from, playing crosstown rivals. And there's history connected to that. There people have graduated from that school. Everything's connected to that community. So when it comes to this sport, you don't have to bring in stars to play it, because we've already got the groundwork, we've already got the grassroots infrastructure in place to grow our own stars, to get our own, to have our own interest involved in it. When you're bringing a sport in that we didn't have that already, and you're trying to introduce it to us, the beautiful game right here, and you don't have that grassroots commitment in place, you're gonna probably it's probably gonna fail, and your strategy is gonna have to be bring in superstars from the other countries to show us the game and to package it and to put it in a way that makes it competitive and enjoyable. And so I just think that it doesn't have football has got sports in general. They need to be able to have that grassroots growth. It's even the same thing with basketball here. You can go from playing pickup games in parks, playing in high school, playing in college, all the way up to the NBA. It works up from the ground, grassroots. We just didn't have that when it came to this game. And I'm sure they're going to start talking about pay to play at some point in this video. But the fact of the matter is, we've actually made it more difficult to have the grassroots ability to grow the game. We've actually really, really screwed that up with pay to play. All right, let's get into this.
A year. Seriously, apparently commercials were overlaid onto the screen while the ball was in play. You see, guys, YouTube did not do it first. I joke, but off the bat, things weren't looking good for the NASL. There was a slow start, but big things were on the horizon. And the first big thing was truly massive. Somehow, the boys over at New York Cosmos had convinced the most famous player to ever step foot on a pitch to sign for them in 1975, Pelé. Initially, there were a lot of questions being asked. This was a peculiar move for a few reasons. First off, Pelé had retired from professional football a year prior. He turned down offers from giants in the game such as Juventus and Real Madrid to hang up his boots. Second of all, nobody outside of America had ever even heard of the club he was going to play for. And third of all, America? Really? People have been trying to drag this guy out of Brazil for years, yet he goes to the country whose professional league was only 7 years old at this point? Strange. However, upon realization that, according to the New York Times, he was paid $4.7 million to play for them over a 3-year period, things
Oh my word. Back in the 70s, man. That's good money back in the 70s. That seems so small when you see the contracts these guys are getting now.
Began to make sense. The media behemoth Warner Communications, and more specifically their CEO, Steve Ross, were responsible for founding and funding the Cosmos. Naturally, they, and more specifically he, were the culprits behind bringing Pelé to North America. And if you're even half familiar with the Warner name at all, you already know that they had the cash to make it happen. Another thing to remember is that despite the fact that he was a 3-time World Cup champion, had countless individual and team awards to his name, and was almost unanimously thought of as the GOAT at that time, footballers were doing okay, but they weren't earning crazy money. In this contract, he was set to earn more money than he had ever earned in his previous 2 decades of football. But money wasn't the only hurdle that needed to be jumped to secure this man. It's hard to fully paint a picture of how globally recognized Pelé was in the 70s. No Instagram, no Facebook, no Sigma edits. TV, radio, and print media reigned supreme, and Pelé had been dominating those spaces for almost 2 decades. He was a superstar in every sense of the word, and in Brazil, a national treasure. The Brazilian government had no intention of allowing their most famous and recognized person to work outside of the country. He was the ultimate ambassador. So, since he was 21, he was effectively barred from leaving. Even after he retired, getting him to move to North America for a last dance proved difficult. US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, a man who happened to be a massive Pelé fan, had to convince them that this transfer would be an important strategic political move to strengthen ties with Brazil and the US in order.
I didn't think about how there would be. I never thought about that. How the country would not want to let go of their superstar. There is so much with this sport that every time I watch something or learn something, there's so much real world implications from this game. It's crazy. Unbelievable. It's unbelievable to think of from my perspective. But every day I have this channel and every day I watch a new video, I learn something new about how this game impacts like political and real world situations. And That's different. It's different from the way that we do sports, that's for sure.
To let him go. This was a robust operation, but a necessary one for the NASL and the Cosmos. Pelé gave the league the credibility that it had been craving from the start. He essentially forced everyone to take the NASL seriously. Before Pelé arrived, according to award-winning sports writer Gavin Newsham, soccer in the United States was dying a slow, painful, and largely unnoticed death. He went on to say that soccer, according to an unnamed writer at the time, was just a game played by commies and fairies in short pants.
Wow.
Which is one of the strangest sentences I've read out loud. You can tell that it was said decades ago. In any case, when Pelé stepped in, even though the vast majority of Americans were not interested in soccer in the slightest, there is a massive celebrity culture. And such, the vast amount of Americans had very much heard of Pelé. Again, this guy was a mythical beast to the general public. Everyone needed to see him alive to confirm all the stories they'd heard. The result? America's interest in soccer surged overnight, and what followed was undoubtedly the most iconic period for the sport in the country's history. The season before Pelé signed, Cosmos had finished bottom of their regional division with a record of 4 wins, 2 draws, and 14 losses.
It's kind of similar to Miami before Messi got there. They were at the bottom.
A 25% win rate. When my man arrived, 3rd out of 5. 45% win rates. But they were improving, and the silverware would soon come. But it's not like any of that really mattered. What really mattered when it came to this whole project wasn't about what was going on the pitch. Soccer was the talk of the town. Again, to quote Gavin Newsham, the impact of Pelé's signing was seismic. Before, they had given away tickets with Burger King vouchers and bumper stickers. Now, they had to lock the gates before the ground reached its capacity. The Cosmos' average attendance per match per season went from about 3,600 in 1974, the year before Pelé arrived, to just under 48,000 by 19.
That's the attendance that was at the USA Bolivia game, and it felt really full in the. It wasn't quite full, but it felt pretty close to full in the AT&T Stadium. They had the upper section kind of roped off, so. But yeah, I can attest that's a big crowd. I've been in that crowd.
1978. This is what we call the Pelé effect, and the man still had it too. 31 goals and 56 appearances in the league over his 3-year tenure was a great return in all honesty, as was an NASL MVP award in 1976. So
Dallas
it
Tornado.
should come as no surprise that after Pelé, several other star players came pouring through. Most notably, Italian striker Giorgio Chinaglia from Lazio, who was one of the best strikers in the world at that point, and Franz Beckenbauer, who was Franz Beckenbauer, and all of a sudden, the wins came pouring in. A star-studded team that were actually performing to their potential. This is something we can all get behind. These guys were winning all of the fans. They were essentially rock stars. You know how celebrities are always spotted courtside at NBA games? Well, when it came to the Cosmos, it was no different. Everyone wanted a piece of them, even actual rock stars. You already know Drake would have been there had he been around at the time. Instead, he had to settle for supporting
the man supports every club.
Moving along. This time around, the fact that
was astonishing. Let's see that again.
Being around at the time, instead, he had to settle for supporting
everyone.
Moving along. This time around, the fact that many of the players were foreign was actually seen as a badge of honor, as opposed to how foreign players were perceived only a few short years prior. We transcended everything, every culture, every socioeconomic boundary. We were international. We were European. We were cool. We were Americans from the Bronx. We were everything to everybody. The words of Shep Messing, the Cosmos goalkeeper at the time. And in 1977, they finally went all the way. New York Cosmos were the Soccer Bowl champions. Yes, I said
Soccer Bowl. What?
Don't laugh. It's a perfectly normal name. I said
the Soccer Bowl champions.
Don't laugh. Anyway, times were good. Until they weren't. The 1977 win was a fantastic victory for the Cosmos. They had finally lived up to the hype and weren't done just yet. I say this because they went on to win the top division title 3 more times in the next 5 years. However, the 77 season was also the last season in Pelé's 3-year contract. For the second and final time, the great man hung up his boots. And it was a pretty sad day when it happened. Pelé closed out his career in a friendly match between Santos and the New York Cosmos, the only 2 club teams he ever played for in his career. In the second half, it started raining. And so, the very next day, a popular Brazilian newspaper printed out that even the sky was crying. But there was more misery to come because, unfortunately for the NASL, almost all of the interest and momentum that the Cosmos had built up in the 3 years prior, much like Pelé, disappeared. Not immediately though. Earlier we took
I can already see it's just the problem with having the culture being wrapped around celebrities instead of the game itself. And that's obvious. That's apparent. That's what this is Americans were gravitated to the celebrity, the product. And it comes down to this every time I talk about this subject. I've got to make my own videos on this because every time we talk about this subject, I bring this up. The difference between our fans, our sports fans, and European sports fans, or just in other places in the world, it's consumer driven. We want to see a product. And so the interest in soccer, when Pelé's here and when Messi's here and when is because we get to see it with our own eyes. We're getting to witness this entertainment. We're a very entertainment heavy culture. We want to see the show. We want to go to the circus. We want to go to the carnival. We want to see the high wire act. We want to see the spectacle. And it's always packaged that way. And so when Pelé's here and when you've got all of this hype surrounding it, you get to see the best product on the field. And so then when he leaves, there's not an infatuation with the game, right? There's no love for the game. It's love for the celebrity. I do think with this game, there's legitimate love for this game in this country. We love the game. The same in many of the same way that football fans love football. So I think there's just a massive difference in the way we approach sports. We're a very consumerist culture, and this celebrity culture permeates even the game that we all love here on this channel. All right, let's get back to Football Iconic.
To look at the average season attendance for the New York Cosmos before and after Pelé joined. It's not bad, as is expected when you're reigning champions. Coincidentally, this is also a chart of the increase in plastic in New York. Anyway, below is a chart of the Cosmos attendance in the years following Pelé's departure. This is what we call the Pelé effect. To be real, Pelé's departure and the league's lack of a star man obviously contributed to its downfall. However, there were a whole host of other reasons for why the walls came tumbling down. In short, the fall of the NASL can be broken down into 4 main categories.
Also, there's no relegation and promotion.
Too much spending, not enough regulation, and a blatant disregard for the traditions of the game. Right. Too much hype. The NASL was growing at an incomprehensible rate in the second half of the 70s. TV deals were being agreed, stadiums were being packed, and the promise of a growing monetizable audience was becoming very, very real. Jackpot, said almost everyone whose money was already tied in the league. Everyone had seen what Cosmos did in signing Pelé and decided that this model was a winner. Johan Cruyff, Georgie Best, Carlos Alberto, and a whole host of other players were signed by other clubs in an attempt to get their piece of the pie. And the league's commissioner, Phil Woosnam, aggressively increased the amount of teams in the league from 18 to 24 in 1977 to reach as many markets and demographics as possible. Well, instead of expanding, they probably should have been examining the popularity and performances of the teams already in the league. a minor detail. The average attendance for the Cosmos in 1978 was the highest of any team in NASL history. Like I said, roughly 48,000. It's good stuff. But the average attendance for the remainder of the league, not counting Cosmos, was less than a quarter of that, about 11,000. And ironically, attendance and ticket sales didn't matter all too much to Cosmos. They were backed by Warner Communications, so they had an unlimited amount of money they could burn through without remorse. The rest of the pack that did need those gate receipts did not. Too much, too fast. Which brings us to point 2. Too much spending. To quote the San Diego Soccer's owner, great team name Jack Daly, directly, it became fashionable to chase the Cosmos. Everyone had to have a Pelé. Coaches went around the world on talent searches, forcing the prices up. And to make matters worse, not only were the majority of the foreign players brought in their twilight of their careers, but new regulations advocating for more North American players to feature in each team meant local talent became increasingly expensive. Again, to quote Daly, our hype tried to present the NASL as a new NFL when we weren't ready. To add insult to injury, on average, 40% of an NFL team's budget went towards wages. For the average NASL team at the time, that figure was over 70%.
That's
too
unsustainable.
Much, too fast. Which brings us to number 3. Not enough regulation. The owners of the new clubs that were being brought into the league were not subject to any form of formal vetting at all. Many of them were the Silicon Valley millionaire type, likely never seen a match in their life. Spending was frivolous, unguided, and had dire consequences. In the 1981 season alone, it's been reported that every single team made a loss. A total of roughly $30 million is the figure that's being quoted.
Wow.
A tremendous sum of money in 2024. A gargantuan amount of money in the early 80s. A salary cap was introduced at the onset of the 1984 season.
Just like the NFL salary cap.
But at that point, it was too little, too late. We spent too much money trying to market teams as if they were instant big league franchises before the attendance and money justified it. Chicago's Sting owner, Lee Stern. Too much, too fast. And finally, number 4. Disregarding traditions. A big reason why the NASL is not remembered too fondly, especially by purists, is its inconsistency in rulemaking and alteration of long-standing football traditions. The majority of American sports are high-scoring affairs, so soccer was a deviation from the norm that the decision-makers of the NASL felt was a crutch. To minimize offsides calls, a rule was put in place that stated that instead of using the halfway line as the point where no offsides could be called, a line 35 yards from each goal was the new cutoff. The clock counted down instead of up, like many other North American sports. To prevent draws, penalty shootouts were added for all games that ended in a tie. The number of points awarded to teams for wins varied considerably season after season. The teams were even awarded extra points for goals scored up to a max of 3 points.
Wait,
this was all...
What?
Season. The teams were even awarded extra points for goals scored up to a max of 3 points. This was all very wild. From a fan perspective, I fully understand why people were clocking out. The NBA, the NFL, MLB have all gone through rule changes as time went by, but they were all rooted in their own unique identity. From what it seems, the NASL was never sure who or what it really was, constantly trying to change the rules and do anything to get eyeballs on its product. All signs pointed towards complete collapse. Drained, demoralized, and broke, team after team closed operations. And by 1984, the NASL was no more. The NASL should always act as a cautionary tale for any and every ambitious organization in the world, sporting or otherwise. Be wary of exponential growth, because sometimes it really is too good to be true. After hearing all of that, it's hard not to kind of drift off and imagine what things would have been like if the Pelé signing was simply used as a springboard and the league found a way to grow in a sustainable fashion without the reckless spending. Based on how large the general American sporting scene is in today's day and age, I can say with no doubt whatsoever that America would be a superpower. the superpower. And the irony in all of this, corroborating what I just said, is that soccer was actually getting popular in the States and millions of children and adults were really getting into it. Schools were starting to play it more and more. Adoption was on the way. There was clearly an appetite for the game. This was on display during the 1994 World Cup, which was hosted in the US to great success. This World Cup proved just how much local interest there was in the sport and helped pave the way towards the formation of the MLS. However, taking all of that into consideration for the sake of completion, if we're being fair, we do have to give credit where credit is due. For all the rule changes and inconsistencies, we have the NASL to thank for a few very prominent aspects of the sport. To make players easier to identify, they are credited with being the first to print player names on shirts. They were also credited with being the first to do away with the back pass rule, whereby goalkeepers could pick up back passes, and the strict salary cap on players that keeps MLS club spending in check was likely heavily inspired by the NASL. Anyway, after all of that, I would like you guys to walk away from this video with this one very important message. This entire video and all my blabbering is just to say that Pelé was 100% to blame for all of this, and he categorically ruined football in America. I'm kidding, of course. Or am I? Anyway, there we have it. That's all for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you're having a great day. Cheers, and I will catch you in the next one.
Yeah, I still, okay. Go ahead and give my closing thoughts here. I still would say I don't think it's fair to say football has failed in America, and I'm interested that he never got into pay-to-play, because I do think that the pay-to-play system is a problem that we're going to have to solve. But I don't think that football has failed in America. In fact, at least it doesn't feel that way now. It feels like the grassroots interest is here now. There's actually a love for the game now. I don't know. There probably still is a little bit of that celebrity culture with Messi showing up, but I do see a lot of love for the game. You know, we are a country of immigrants, and so there's a lot of love from many communities in our country who grew up with this game, and I think it's spreading to all of us. Like it's really growing, and this World Cup in 2026 is going to be huge. You're going to see where we're actually at, and then in 2026 we'll be able to I'll probably be able to make a video then where we really just kind of look at the journey and see where we're at and see what the true atmosphere around here is. And we've got a better coach this time around, so I'm looking forward to some better football on the world stage. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.